ต่อไป
摩诃拉扎芒克拉张大长老，尊敬的本智长老，来自世界各国各地区的各位长老、各位法友，首先，我代表中国佛教代表团，
ประเทศ
对为期3天的联合国卫赛节第12届国际佛教大会，
President of
在
Buddhist
守护
Association
圣
of
明
China
的
นะครับเป็นท่าน
摩诃苏拉隆功
เป็นประธานของ
大
ส
学
มา
的
ค
召
ม
开，
พุทธศาสนาในประ
表
เทศ
示
จีน
热烈的祝贺。这次大会得到泰王国政府与泰国争取委员会的大力支持。摩诃苏拉隆功大学主办，大会的主题是佛教与世界性危机，凸显了佛教对化解世界性危机的慈悲关切与智慧的关照。有来自世界各国各地区80多个国家和地区的1000多位的佛教代表前来参加这次的大会，因缘非常的殊胜。今天整个人类所共同面临的世界性危机，已经将人类世生紧密的连接为一个命运共同体。越早意识到这一点，人类就容易形成合力，来共同面对危机，而不是让危机进一步加深。实验的世界性危机包括：一、长久以来，人类无限制的对生存环境进行掠夺式的开采，以及无节制的废弃物排放所导致的生态危机；二、在资源紧缺以及生存发展需求双重压力下所导致的战争危机；三、过于追求物质发展所陷入的信仰危机。这3大世界性危机的形成，尤其深刻的历史渊源。地理大发现、文艺复兴、宗教改革，开启了现代文明的序幕，并形成了现代文明的4大根本特征，强调人类个性的习惯和自由，以及科学技术的发展和应用。这原本是现代文明比过去文明要先进发达的地方。然而，一旦个性的习惯和自由变成不受约束的个人和群体的欲望膨胀，再以迅速发展的科技力量为助缘，便会酿成世界性的灾难，把人类世间推向更加痛苦的深渊。先是一个国家、一个地区，后又形成全球性的自然环境恶化，先是2个国家之间，然后又是多个国家之间，再后来所形成的世界范围内的战争，就是最好的名胜。当人类所追求和信奉带来的却是更深的灾难和痛苦的时候，更深层次的信仰危机也就随之而来。危机产生的根源并不是外在，而是内在。生态危机的产生根源于人类内心的贪婪，战争危机的产生根源于人类内心的嗔恨，信仰危机的产生根源于人类内心的愚痴。贪婪、嗔恨、愚痴，有种子根源于人类内心的我执。人类内心的我执，在现代文明当中呈现的分支，便是人类 中心主义、民族中心主义等等形形色色的中心主义。人类中心主义是我执在整个人类群体中的放大，他错误地认为人类是世界的中心，其他动物、食物乃至整个生存的环境都因为人类的存在才有意义，也都是用来为人类服务的。因此，人类可以尽情地去检验这一切。民族中心主义是我执在自己所属民族群体当中的放大，他错误地认为自己所属的民族最优越、最高等，其他民族都处于劣势，是低等的民族，都应该为自己所属的民族来服务。人类中心主义为人类无节制地向自然索取提供了合理的支撑，助长了人类。民族中心主义为民族恣意侵犯其他民族提供了合法的依据，助长了人类的嗔恨，因此导致最严重的战争危机。当这些形形色色的中心主义得不到检点和认识，反而不断加增的时候，人类社会迷失自我，在给环境、给他人带来伤害的同时，让自身也陷入到极度的痛苦的深渊。我执是世界性危机的根源，因此认识并克服我执，也成为化解世界性危机、成就世界和平与和谐的根本渠道。这是一条非常艰难而又漫长的道路。为了做到这一点，佛陀选择了出家修行，最终克服了我执，证得了无我的境界，因此获得了化解危机的智慧和力量。当觉悟的佛陀重归生活，给予人们谆谆教导的时候，无不是在告诉人们化解危机之道。具体说来，便是平等、尊重、慈悲、奉献。佛在《金刚经》当中说：“四法平等，无有高下。”便是在解释万事万物的平等本性，认知到人类与环境之间、民族与民族之间、自己与他人之间的平等本性，便能有效地对峙形形色色的各种人类中心主义，更能够以尊重的态度对待人类赖以生存的环境，对待其他民族和其他个人。不仅如此，佛陀还教导人们应当以慈悲心面对一切众生，奉献自我而不是疲厌，便能呈现生命的意义和价值，成就生命的庄严和神圣。佛在《大般若经》当中说道：“菩萨摩诃萨应发一切智智心，以大悲为上首，以无所得为方便。”化解世界性危机，端赖全人类的共同努力，也因此需要全人类所能共同接受，并能引领全人类前进的文化价值体系和宗教信仰体系作为向导。这种文化价值体系和宗教信仰体系不为某种文化或某种宗教所特有，也为人类各大文化和宗教所贯通，同时有超越于各大文化和宗教之上。这样一种文化价值体系和宗教信仰体系，需要基于各大文化 和宗教之间的深入对话，彼此取长补短，方能逐渐形成。佛教自从诞生之日起，便一直以开放、包容的心态，在与各种文化和宗教对话的过程当中，自觉地充实自我，乃至超越自我，也因此能够担当起重建一种文化价值体系和宗教信仰体系的时代重任。中国佛教在传播过程当中所形成的南传佛教、藏传佛教、汉传佛教，都自觉地扮演了学院的一种角色，并对当地新文明形态的形成发挥了积极的作用。在过去2个世纪里，佛教也开始进入西方社会，通过与西方宗教及科技文明的对话，逐渐对西方社会产生了积极而又深刻的影响。由于现代文明具有全球性的特征，我们相信佛教对未来全球新文明形态的形成，必定能发挥更加积极重要的作用，从而为解决和化解全球性危机找到最根本的出路。毫无疑问，40几年来，联合国卫赛节、国际佛教大会所付出的辛勤努力，对于积极推动佛教融入并完善现代文明做出了重要的贡献。我们双经书院本届大会的召开取得圆满成功，谢谢大家。
เป็นการกล่าวสุนทรพจน์นะครับจากพระเดชพระคุณเซี่ยเฉิงครับ President of Buddhist Association of China นะครับจากสาธารณรัฐประชาชนจีนครับ
Thank you very much for the speech from Most Venerable Xie Xiong, President of Buddhist Association of China.
ลำดับถัดไปครับผมขออนุญาตกราบอาราธนาสมเด็จพระอภิสิริสุขันธมหาสังฆราชาธิบดีกิติอุเทศบัณฑิตครับจากแคนเบเดียครับ
Let us welcome our next guest speaker from Cambodia, สมเด็จพระอภิสิริสุขันธมหาสังฆราชาธิบดีกิติอุเทศบัณฑิต
I would like to deliver message His Holiness សម្ដេចព្រះអភិសិរិសុគន្តាមហាសង្ឃរាចាធិបតីគតិឧដេសាបណ្ឌិតាប៊ូគ្រី The screen so brief. His Holiness, Most Venerable Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, On behalf of the Buddhists in Cambodia, I would like to share our condolence and sadly to Nepalese people of southern these injuries and affected by 7.8 magnitude earthquake on 25 April 2015. Hit Pokhara and Nepal. I pray for them, God in serenity and recovery soon. The Vesak Day is the most significant day of the year in the Buddhist calendar, and the royal government of Cambodia is celebrated the Vesak Day as like Buddhists in the world. The day commemorates the birth, enlightenment, and death of the Buddha, and is a day of immense joy, peace, and reflection. In Cambodia, Vesak Day usually falls in the month of May on the full moon, 15th day of Cambodia lunar calendar. On this day, devout Buddhists and flower alike congregate at their various temples before dawn for the ceremonial where the Buddhist flag will be hosted and hymn sung in praise of the Holy Triple Gem. The Buddha, the Dhamma, his teaching, and the Sangha, his disciples. Devotees often bring simple offering of flowers, candles, and juice sticks to lay at the feet of their spiritual teacher. This symbolics His Majesty, Royal Government of Cambodia, His Holiness Mahasangharaja, monks and lay people unity, remind followers that life too is subject to decay when the offering burn out or will away. In 1999, the UN recognized internationally Vesak Days to acknowledge the contribution that Buddhism brings us peace, compassion, and love, one of the oldest religions in the world. Has made for over 2,500 years. This day is commemorated annually the UN headquarters and other UN office and mission. I congratulate to the 3-day celebration of the 12th United Nations Day of Vesak will be held in Ayutthaya and Bangkok, Thailand from 28 to 30 May 2015. On the occasion, I would like to people in the world abandon resolve, discrimination, and violence. All turn to respect human rights, compassion, love, and harmony. I pray all may serenity, peace, and prosperity. Thank you very much.
กราบนมัสการครับเป็นการกล่าวสุนทรพจน์นะครับจากสมเด็จพระอภิสิริสุขันธมหาสังฆราชาธิบดีกิตติอุเทศบัณฑิตนะครับจากแคนเบอเรียครับ
Thank you very much for the message from สมเด็จพระอภิสิริสุขันธมหาสังฆราชาธิบดีกิตติอุเทศบัณฑิต
และช่วงลำดับถัดไปครับเราจะเข้าสู่ช่วงของความสำคัญอีกหนึ่งช่วงนะครับจะเป็นการปาฐกถานะครับในหัวข้อเรื่องพระพุทธศาสนากับวิกฤตของโลกนะครับโดยเราได้รับเกียรติจาก Keynote Speaker ในปีนี้นะครับศาสตราจารย์ดร. เดเมียน คีโอนนะครับจาก UK ครับ
Let us welcome our keynote speaker from United Kingdom, Damien Keon, who is an emeritus professor of Buddhist ethics at Goldsmiths College, University of London. His first degree was in religious studies at the University of Lancaster, and he completed his doctoral studies at the Oriental Institute, University of Oxford. His main research interests are theoretical and applied aspects of Buddhist ethics, with particular reference to contemporary issues.
ซึ่งในปีนี้นะครับ Keynote Speaker นะครับหยิบหัวข้อที่จะมาพูดนะครับเป็นการเริ่มต้นก่อนที่จะเข้าสู่ช่วงของการระดมความคิดเห็นนะครับเกี่ยวกับเรื่องราวของวิกฤตการณ์ของโลกนะครับโดยใช้หลักธรรมคำสอนทางพระพุทธศาสนาครับเข้ามาปรับนะครับว่าอย่างไรเพราะจะเห็นได้นะครับว่าณปัจจุบันเมื่อโลกเปลี่ยนแปลงไปเรามีวิกฤตเกิดขึ้นเยอะแยะมากมายไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่องราวของภาวะเศรษฐกิจเรื่องราวของสังคมและก็อีกหลากหลายด้านครับ
Your Holiness, Venerable Mahasangha, Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am honoured by the invitation to deliver this address on the occasion of the 12th United Nations Day of Vesak celebrations. The theme of my speech today is Buddhism and the World Crisis. While reflecting on the word crisis, I was reminded of a remark made by US President John F. Kennedy in a speech he gave in Indianapolis in 1959. The president said, "The Chinese used 2 brushstrokes to write the word crisis. One brushstroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity." I don't know if the president's understanding of Chinese was accurate, but I would like to take those words as the inspiration for my comments today. Certainly, there is a world crisis, and this presents itself in many shapes and forms. While the world has faced many crises in the past, the threat seems greater today due to modern developments such as globalization, advanced technology, mass migration, and the accelerated speed of transport and communications. The pace of change has never been faster, allowing less time to pause in the face of the challenges and less time to develop wise solutions. In the face of these challenges, there is a pervasive feeling, both among individual citizens and their political leaders, of being caught off balance and wrong-footed by events, of being swept along by a tsunami of powerful forces which are beyond the power even of governments and world leaders to control. In this context, there is a greater need than ever for Buddhist teachings to be heard, and not just heard, but implemented with commitment and decisiveness. In addition to the valuable ongoing panel on Buddhist texts, the 4 panels in the present conference will explore the role of Buddhism in the current world crisis under the following headings, as you see on the slide. These are interrelated themes, and I will say something about each of them in turn, beginning with the 3rd, Buddhism and the ASEAN community. I begin with ASEAN for 2 reasons. First, because 2015 marks the year in which the ASEAN community comes into being. And second, because questions like social conflict, the environment, and education will increasingly demand regional as opposed to national or local solutions. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations was founded in Bangkok with the signing of the ASEAN Declaration on 8th of August 1967. The ASEAN Charter, which came into force on the 15th of December 2008, gave a legal and institutional framework for the creation of the ASEAN community. The motto of ASEAN is one vision, one identity, one community. And the aims and purposes of ASEAN, as stated in its founding declaration, are as shown on your screens. I won't discuss these 7 items in detail, and will confine myself to highlighting what seem to me the key words. The words that stand out to me are partnership, peace, prosperity, respect, collaboration, assistance, and cooperation. To what extent are these 7 aims and purposes in harmony with Buddhist values? Like us, the Buddha lived at a time of change and instability. In his day, smaller states were being incorporated into larger political units, not voluntarily, as in the case of ASEAN, but as a result of the aggressive policies of their expansionist neighbors. As an alternative to this pattern of conquest and annexation, the Buddha commended an alternative political model based on collaboration and peaceful coexistence through the implementation of what he called the 7 conditions of welfare. First of all, he said, there must be full and frequent assemblies. This implies a democratic system in which people or their representatives meet regularly for discussion on all matters. Secondly, the assemblies must meet in concord, rise in concord, and carry on their business in concord. Here, there is an emphasis on united action in establishing an agreed manifesto, an agenda for action, and the implementation of democratically agreed policies. It also implies that communities will help each other in times of need. Third, they should enact nothing not already established, abrogate nothing that has already been enacted, and act in accordance with their ancient institutions. Perhaps this sounds overly conservative and suggests the Buddha was opposed to change. I think instead it was intended to safeguard the identity of the community and to establish the principle that resolutions should only be approved when they are in harmony with the community's constitution and values. In simple terms, it suggests that everyone should respect the law. Number 4, they should honor, respect, revere, and salute the elders and make it a point of duty to listen to their words. This involves recognition of the contribution of wise statesmen and political leaders. It can also be seen as a call to respect and participate in the democratic process. Number 5, they do not take away by force or abduct women or girls and detain them. Here we see the Buddha's strong disapproval of violence towards women and an implicit call for gender equality. While directed specifically at women, by extension, it includes all vulnerable members of society and would prohibit exploitative practices like slavery, human trafficking, and child labor. Point 6, they honor, revere, and support religious shrines, whether in town or country, and do not allow them to fall into disrepair. This is a call for respect for religion and its symbols and material culture. It includes the sacred buildings of all religions, such as temples, mosques, churches, and shrines, along with their respective communities. Finally, point 7, they provide protection, defense, and support for arahants so that those from far away may enter the realm and live in peace. linked to the previous condition, this can be interpreted as a call for tolerance and religious freedom throughout the community. In addition, it suggests that those who wish to live in peace and bring benefits to the community are welcomed. I make no claim that these two lists of 7 items are identical, much less that the Buddha laid the foundations for the ASEAN Constitution. I suggest only that the two lists share a common direction of travel. In essence, what I think we see the Buddha calling for is a transparent democratic system built around consensus and based on a constitution enshrining humanitarian values, protection of the vulnerable, and freedom of religion. I think we can say there is no great incompatibility between the two lists, and it seems the political constitution and economic infrastructure provided by ASEAN can further the aims of allowing communities to coexist in peace and prosperity in the modern world, an ideal to which Buddhists can happily subscribe. To forge the member states into a functioning community was the aim of the ASEAN Vision 2020, adopted in 2006. Here, the ASEAN leaders agreed on a shared vision of ASEAN as a concert of Southeast Asian nations, outward-looking, living in peace, stability, and prosperity, bonded together in partnership, in dynamic development, and in a community of caring societies. The ASEAN community is made up of 3 pillars: ASEAN Political Security Community, the ASEAN Economic Community, and the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community. While nations in which Buddhism is influential will, like other member states, have an interest in the first 2 of these pillars, the contribution of Buddhist teachings and values will be especially important in the 3rd. The aims of the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, in which matters such as religious belief and tradition will play an important role, include achieving, and I quote, enduring solidarity and unity among the peoples and member states of ASEAN. It seeks to forge a common identity and build a caring and sharing society which is inclusive and where the well-being, livelihood, and welfare of the people are enhanced, unquote. The various dimensions of ASEAN mentioned so far connect in various ways with the topics to be discussed at this conference. Buddhism has no objection to economic prosperity and the expansion of trade, provided, of course, that prosperity does not lead to rampant consumerism, and economic development takes place in a sustainable and environmentally responsible manner. Here we have a link to our second conference theme, namely concern for environmental degradation. Regional peace and stability and respect for justice and law are also admirable objectives and connect to our first conference theme, which addresses the problem of social conflict. ASEAN's commitment to renunciation of the use of force and to the peaceful settlements of disputes is of key importance here. Our fourth conference theme, the Buddhist response to the educational crisis, is picked up by references in the 4th and the 6th of the 7 ASEAN principles to the provision of assistance in training and research, and also to the promotion of Southeast Asian studies. This last item provides a platform for expanding the study of Buddhism at various levels of the curriculum, a point I will return to shortly. While Buddhist values overlap to a large degree with those of ASEAN, on a practical level, it will be the task of the representatives of the Buddhist member states to be vigilant in ensuring that the formulation and implementation of specific policies reflects the values of their home constituencies. Buddhist groups and organizations will need to ensure that their views on social, economic, and political issues are expressed at the appropriate levels within the ASEAN socio-cultural community. Having said something about the aims and principles of ASEAN, let me turn individually to the 3 remaining conference themes. Of these, the environmental crisis is perhaps the most serious. It is the most serious because of its global nature and its capacity to threaten the well-being of the planet in a fundamental way. Apart from harm to the environment itself, environmental degradation has a knock-on effect in other areas. It affects health and economic development, and potentially also conflict as resources become scarcer. Importantly, the effects of environmental degradation are felt most keenly by the poor. To turn this challenge into an opportunity will require considerable initiative, thought, and planning. The ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Sustainability is very comprehensive, as you can see on your screens. Progress to achieving the stated aims is already being made. A program run by the ASEAN Centre for Biodiversity, ACB, in conjunction with Germany, was launched in Jakarta in April 2015. The project, entitled Protection of Biological Diversity in the ASEAN Member States, aims to protect the biological diversity, promote the sustainable management of natural ecosystems, and improve the livelihoods of local population in the ASEAN region. Earlier last month, the Secretary General of ASEAN, speaking in Hanoi, accepted that, quote, ASEAN, as elsewhere in the world, despite abundant human and natural resources, does face a big challenge in keeping a delicate balance between environmental sustainability and economic development. In his remarks, the Secretary General said there was, quote, broad agreement that with regard to sustainable development, ASEAN's post-2015 vision should continue to promote inclusive, sustained, and equitable economic growth and sustainable development, consistent with the UN post-2015 agenda, while ensuring a proper balance between economic development and environmental protection. Work is being done to explore ways in which specific economies thrive in ASEAN while preserving their traditional ecological values. The work on the screen is an example of this and includes papers from a conference at Assumption University in 2013. One author, in his contribution entitled Buddhist Economics and Ecology, a lesson for the future of the ASEAN community, contrasts mainstream economics, which he calls an economics of greed, with Buddhist economics, whose goal, he says, is not to maximize utility, but to promote a healthy life for the individual and wellness, peace, and tranquility for society. In the Buddha's time, there was no environmental crisis of the kind we face today. He was, nevertheless, well aware that nature can be a powerful ally or a dangerous enemy, and that the relationship between human beings and the natural world was complex and needed careful management. The inhabitants of the region where he lived were very much at the mercy of the environment, and the early sources speak of natural disasters, like flooding or drought, leading to starvation, depopulation, poverty, and crime. The Buddha realized that the survival of forests and the wilderness was important to those who, like himself, left home to pursue the religious life. While the environmental problems we face today are on a vastly larger scale, we can find in the Buddha's teachings principles that can help guide our thinking. I turn now to the topic of social conflict, a subject that brings us face to face with a number of difficult questions. It is an unfortunate fact that religious discrimination, intimidation, harassment, and violence towards minority, religious, and ethnic groups are currently on the rise, even in countries where Buddhism is well established. Contemporary events have shown that the simplistic view that Buddhism is exclusively a religion of peace and that only other religions promote violence is no longer sustainable. Buddhism, like any religion, can become entangled with nationalism and caught up in ethnic conflict. Of course, this is clearly contrary to Buddhist teachings on violence, which are well known and often repeated. The Dhammapada, invoking the Golden Rule, counsels against violence, and the first precept prohibits causing intentional harm to any living creature. The Buddha explained clearly how conflict often arises from greed, hatred, and delusion, and taught virtues such as kindness, compassion, non-violence, mindfulness, gentleness, contentment, generosity, and wisdom that promote harmonious coexistence, and criticized vices like arrogance, pride, covetousness, egoism, and greed, which fuel animosity and conflict. Greed gives rise to attachment to pleasures, material possessions, territory, and economic and political power. Attachment to dogmatic views and inflexible fundamentalist ideologies can lead to persecutions and bloody crusades. In the last century, millions of deaths can be attributed to such attitudes. Claims such as, "This alone is true, all else is false," are characteristic of attitudes that divide society. Hatred and prejudice become entrenched, often for generations, and are difficult to dislodge. The delusion that oneself or one's community is uniquely privileged and must be protected at all costs reinforces egocentric and nationalist perspectives that see other communities as the enemy and a threat. The Buddha specifically warned against this kind of attitude, counseling his followers not to react angrily if the Buddha, Dhamma, or Sangha were disparaged by others. The great King Ashoka was no stranger to conflict and was responsible for suffering and death on a large scale, as he himself admits. Repenting of these campaigns of conquest, he later sought to implement values of toleration, and in his 12th Rock Edict, spoke about the importance of religious toleration and his desire that all should be well learned in the good doctrines of other religions. He states that he honors both ascetics and householders of all religions and that they flourish. Key to this, he suggests, is restraint in speech, which means not praising one's own religion or condemning the religion of others without good cause. And if there is cause for criticism, it should be done in a mild way. But it is better to honor other religions for this reason. By so doing, one's own religion benefits, and so do other religions, while doing otherwise harms one's own religion and the religions of others. Although delivered many centuries ago, this wise advice seems particularly timely on the threshold of closer integration among the ASEAN nations and their diverse faiths. The ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation, AIPR, was established in 2011 under the auspices of the ASEAN Political Security Community and held its first governing meeting in Jakarta in December 2013. Since then, it has held 2 symposia in 2014, the first in Manila and the second in Bali. The AIPR will have a valuable and difficult role to play in mediation and diffusing tensions which will inevitably arise in a religiously and ethnically diverse community of some 600 million people. Relations between the 2 largest ASEAN religions, Islam and Buddhism, will play a key role in the integration of the community. According to one scholar, the coming formation of the ASEAN community highlights the urgent need for religions of Southeast Asia to move from coexistence to dialogue. When the 10 countries of ASEAN are integrated economically, Buddhists will make up about 40%, 42%. Hence, the formation of an economically dynamic, politically plural, and peaceful ASEAN community will depend on the future of Buddhism-Islam relations. A Apart from intolerance of other religions, conflict can also arise from other sources. Economic inequalities in the distribution of resources can lead to crime and social unrest. And a wise government will seek to avoid this by ensuring that material support is provided for the poorest in society. For those members of the laity with greater resources, the Buddha gave useful advice on how to generate and spend their wealth, and offered guidance on what sorts of trades and professions should be engaged in. Buddhism thus has a wide range of strategies to draw on, including mindfulness and meditation, to help avoid social conflict and to diffuse it once arisen. Turning now to the final conference theme, the theme of educational crisis. Buddhism is an intellectually dynamic tradition that holds learning in great esteem. Scholarship, or Gantadura, is recognized as an important and legitimate monastic career. At times, however, learning can sometimes deteriorate into the mindless copying or chanting of texts without any real understanding. To avoid this requires a comprehensive system of education from primary to university level, in which questioning, originality, analysis, and critical reflection are encouraged. A UN ECOSOC ministerial declaration in 2011 spoke of the interlinkages between education and the advancement of all the other Millennium Development Goals. We also recognize, it said, that education plays a fundamental role in creating an inclusive society and reducing inequity and inequality, as well as achieving sustained, inclusive, and equitable economic growth, poverty eradication, and sustainable development. Following a 2-year review of the curricula of member countries, ASEAN produced an ASEAN curriculum sourcebook as a tool for educators. The sourcebook describes itself as a resource that teachers throughout ASEAN can use to help learners explore their many connections to one another and to conceive of themselves both as individuals and as engaged members in their community, country, their region, and the world. As they do so, they will understand the complex ways in which peoples and lands across ASEAN are connected and be able to exchange and appreciate diverse perspectives and envision new ways in which they can work together to realize common goals and a brighter future. The sourcebook explores 5 themes: knowing ASEAN, valuing identity and diversity, connecting global and local, promoting equity and justice, and working together for sustainable development. Through 4 pathways: people, places, materials, and ideas. While the sourcebook is primarily intended for use in primary and secondary schools, it provides a blueprint that could be adapted for use in higher education as well. Institutions will need to review their existing curricula to make sure they meet the needs of incoming students who will graduate as citizens of the ASEAN community. The International Association of Buddhist Universities, with member universities in Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia, seems well placed to coordinate this work and to represent Buddhist views on education in the socio-cultural community of ASEAN. The IABU's vision, mission, and goals broadly coincide with the educational objectives of ASEAN, UNESCO, and UN ECOSOC, and discussions have already taken place on a model ASEAN Buddhist studies curriculum. It remains to be seen whether and how this work will be carried forward in institutions. In conclusion, let me echo the quote from John F. Kennedy, mentioned at the start, with one from another famous politician, Winston Churchill. Churchill is reputed to have said, "Never waste a good crisis." And while he was referring to crises of a political nature, I think his words also apply more broadly. Crisis also brings the opportunity for change, and I hope our conference will focus on the opportunities currently available. While the four areas of crisis I have mentioned can be tackled independently, I have suggested that they are interconnected, as shown in the slide. The positive outcome we look forward to in addressing these crises successfully is a well-educated population in the ASEAN community and elsewhere, enjoying prosperity based on sustainable development and living in peaceful societies. I hope this is not too utopian an ideal, and that it is one which our discussions in this conference can help bring a little closer. Thank you for your attention.
ขอบพระคุณครับนี่เป็นการบรรยายและปาฐกถาพิเศษนะครับในหัวข้อพระพุทธศาสนากับวิกฤตของโลกนะครับโดย keynote speaker ในปีนี้นะครับคือดร. เดเมียน คิโอนครับจาก United Kingdom ครับ
Thank you very much indeed to Professor Dr. Damien Keown from the United Kingdom for your keynote on world crisis. It is truly inspiring.
ครับผมซึ่งศาสตราจารย์ดร. เดเมียน คิโอนนะครับณปัจจุบันครับเป็นทั้งผู้ให้การสอนนะครับแล้วก็รวมถึงเป็นผู้บรรยายเกี่ยวกับเรื่องราวของพระพุทธศาสนานะครับกับเรื่องราวของจริยธรรมนะครับโดยมีประสบการณ์นะครับในเรื่องของการเรียนการสอนมากมายหลากหลายที่นะครับและณปัจจุบันครับเป็นศาสตราจารย์นะครับประจำอยู่ที่ Department of History Goldsmith College นะครับมหาวิทยาลัยลอนดอนประเทศอังกฤษครับและในช่วงนี้นะครับขออนุญาตกราบเรียนเชิญครับทุกท่านนะครับสำหรับแขกผู้มีเกียรติและพระเถรานุเถระทุกท่านนะครับลุกขึ้นยืนครับถวายความเคารพครับเพื่อส่งเสด็จนะครับสมเด็จพระมหารัชมังคลาจารย์ผู้ปฏิบัติหน้าที่สมเด็จพระสังฆราชประธานในพิธีช่วงเช้านี้ครับ
Please rise to pay respect to His Holiness สมเด็จพระมหารัชมังคลาจารย์ the Acting Supreme Patriarch of Thailand
และในช่วงเวลานี้นะครับผมขออนุญาตแจ้งรายละเอียดนะครับกับช่วงของการรับประทานอาหารกลางวันและฉันภัตตาหารเพลนะครับเราเตรียมไว้ทั้งหมด2จุดนะครับนั่นคือจุดแรกที่บริเวณด้านล่างนะครับแยกเป็น2โซนมีโซนเวียน
ใช่ครับการอยู่ร่วมในสังคมคือธรรมะพระพุทธเจ้าหยิบข้อไหนมาดีหมดและดีมากก็จะดีหมดแล้ว
อย่างดีหมดแล้วก็ดีมาก
ดีมาก
ครับ
เพียงแต่ว่าเราจะหยิบตรงไหนมาใช้ให้เหมาะกับเวลาและสถานการณ์ตรงนั้นนะครับคือท่านสอนไว้ทุกสถานการณ์อย่างเช่นเรื่องของการขันติไม่ตอบโต้เนี่ยมีครั้งหนึ่งมีพราหมณ์คนหนึ่งไปด่าพระพุทธเจ้าด่าอยู่ประมาณครึ่งชั่วโมงพระพุทธเจ้าก็นั่งฟังอยู่นั้นนะพอนั่งฟังเกิดพราหมณ์คนเรามาด่าไปนานๆได้เกิดอาการโมโหคนไม่โกรธโมโหนะครับก็เลยโมโหก็เลยถามพระพุทธเจ้าถามพระพุทธเจ้าพระเจ้าเลยถามว่าด่าจบหรือยังพราหมณ์พราหมณ์บอกด่าจบแล้วพราหมณ์ถ้ามีคนไปหาพราหมณ์ที่บ้านแล้วเอาน้ำเอาอาหารให้เขากินถ้าเขาไม่กินแล้วน้ำและผลไม้เหล่านั้นเป็นของใคร
ครับ
พราหมณ์บอกว่าเป็นของผมนี่ของโยมนี่แหละพระเจ้าบอกเช่นเดียวกันคำที่โยมด่ามาแต่มาไม่รับ
นะครับก็เป็นของโยมไป
เป็นของโยมไปไม่นี่เขาเรียกว่าเหนือชั้นเรียกว่าเซียน
ต้องเซียนคือไม่ตอบโต้แถมเป็นการเตือนแล้วก็ตักเตือนว่าแบบอ้อมโอ้โหถ้าคนคิดได้คิดเป็นนี่รู้เลยนะครับอาจารย์อัครพลเพิ่มเติมไหมฮะจากที่ผมการสุนทรพจน์
ประทับใจในสุนทรพจน์ของprofessor โคเอนมากทีเดียวในเรื่องของที่ท่านได้พูดถึงคำสอนพุทธศาสนาซึ่งไม่ล้าสมัยอย่างเช่นทุกวันนี้ที่มันเกิดเหตุการณ์ล่าสุดก็คือในเรื่องของการฆ่ามนุษย์โรฮิงญาใช่ไหมครับเพราะฉะนั้นท่านบอกว่าถ้าหากว่ายึดตามคำสอนพุทธศาสนาที่ยึดเรื่องของความเมตตาหรือเรียกว่าพรหมวิหาร4นี่นะครับก็จะแก้ปัญหาเรื่องการค้าทาสการค้ามนุษย์และแรงงานเด็กได้ทีเดียวผมคิดว่าถ้าหากว่าผู้นำประเทศในอาเซียนนะครับ ปฏิบัติตามแนวคำสอนของเราแล้วนี่นะครับโดยยึดหลักตรงนี้คือพรหมวิหาร4เนี่ยผมคิดว่าการแก้ปัญหาแรงงานหรือการแก้ปัญหาการค้ามนุษย์เนี่ยก็จะหมดลงและประเด็นหนึ่งที่เราโดนหรือทางยุโรปนะครับเรื่องของการกีดกันทางด้านการส่งนะครับสินค้าประมงไปขายเนี่ยอาจจะมาจากสาเหตุเป็นแรงงานเด็กด้วยเพราะฉะนั้นผมคิดว่าถ้าหากว่าองค์กรต่างๆไม่ว่าจะเป็นอาเซียนหรือระดับโลกนี่นะครับได้ยึดหลักพรหมวิหาร4แล้วเนี่ยปัญหาเหล่านี้แก้หมดแน่นอนแล้วก็ท่านจะเน้นในเรื่องของดุลยภาพคือการพัฒนาทุกอย่างเนี่ยต้องมีความสมดุลนะครับพัฒนาเศรษฐกิจก็พัฒนาไปแต่ในขณะเดียวกันการพัฒนาจิตใจก็ต้องคู่ไปด้วยเพราะฉะนั้นนี่professor Cohen เนี่ยจะเน้นในเรื่องของเสาที่3คือเสา1เสา2เนี่ยก็ทำไปแต่ในเสา1เสา2เนี่ยนะครับก็ควรจะให้สมส่วนสมดุลกับเสาที่3ด้วยนะครับก็คือเกิดประชาคมทางสังคมวัฒนธรรมที่สมส่วนไปด้วยกันได้ถ้าเป็นอย่างนี้ก็จะทำให้เสาอาเซียนนี่มันมั่นคงนะครับก็ถือว่าเป็นสุนทรพจน์ที่มีประโยชน์มากนะครับและตรงประเด็นมากที่สุดในเรื่องของอาเซียนและคำสอนของพุทธศาสนาซึ่งถ้าทำได้อย่างนี้นะครับวิกฤตการณ์ทั้ง4ด้านที่ว่ามาที่จะนำเสนอนะครับจากวันนี้เป็นต้นไปก็จะแก้ได้ครับ
นี่เป็นเนื้อหาใจความในภาคเช้าวันนี้นะครับเดี๋ยวตอนนี้เราจะไปพักกันสักครู่หนึ่งนะครับเพราะว่าภายในห้องประชุมนะครับพระภิกษุสงฆ์ภิกษุณีผู้นำชาวพุทธจะร่วมกันฉันภัตตาหารเพลและพักรับประทานอาหารกลางวันเวลาประมาณ 12 นาฬิกาเดี๋ยวเรากลับมาพบกันอีกครั้งหนึ่งกับการถ่ายทอดสดเนื่องในการจัดกิจกรรมวิสาขบูชานานาชาติครั้งที่ 12 จากที่ประชุมมหาวิทยาลัยมหาจุฬาลงกรณราชวิทยาลัยพักกันสักครู่แล้วเดี๋ยวกลับมาครับ